Alright, West Africa has been shaken once again, and this time the aftershock is hitting even harder than the coup itself. Within hours of the military takeover in Guinea-Bissau, Ecowas moved very fast. They suspended the country from the bloc entirely, just cut it off from the very organization that once claimed to defend democracy in West Africa. And then, as the dust was still settling, something even more shocking happened. The president, Umaro Sissoco Embaló, the man the junta claimed to have detained, he suddenly resurfaced in Senegal, alive, free, and very far away from the chaos unfolding in Bissau. So in today's program, we are not just covering the coup itself. We are going to unpack the political earthquake that came right after it. Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Ivory Coast, every single major West African country has taken their side here. Even the United Nations has stepped in, condemning the generals and demanding a return to constitutional order. Meanwhile, and this is very important, Ecowas observers, including former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, were trapped in the country as gunfire echoed through the capital. And it was Ivory Coast, not the Nigerian government, that stepped in to coordinate his evacuation. This is no longer just a story about soldiers seizing power. This is a story about regional weakness, international pressure, and a president fleeing at the exact moment his people expected leadership. It's also about the ordinary citizens of Guinea-Bissau, caught in the middle, confused, silenced, and bracing for impact of whatever comes next. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into how Ecowas responded with, or should I say, unprecedented force. They responded swiftly like they always do. How neighboring powers revealed their true alignment, and why we think this coup may have been staged from the inside all along. So let's break down the aftershock sweeping West Africa right now, because the fallout from Guinea-Bissau is only just the beginning. Let's get into it. So West Africa's regional bloc, Ecowas, has taken its strongest action yet, formally suspending Guinea-Bissau from all decision-making bodies after the military installed a general as the interim leader of the country. Within 24 hours of the coup, regional leaders gathered for a virtual extraordinary summit. This was on November 27th, basically yesterday, and the verdict was swift. Guinea-Bissau is now suspended from Ecowas, and the suspension came with sharp language. Ecowas condemned the military takeover as, and I am quoting here, grave violation of constitutional order, and rejected any arrangement that, for a lack of better word, perpetuates the illegal abortion of the democratic process. Now, this wasn't just symbolic. The suspension means Guinea-Bissau loses its voice at the highest level of West African decision-making, its access to regional trade benefits, and its standing among nations that claim to defend democracy. For a country already isolated by poverty and instability, this is economic and diplomatic devastation. But the political weight here is even heavier, because Ecowas has now lost yet another member to military rule. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they already walked away from the bloc to form the Alliance of Sahel States. With Guinea-Bissau now suspended, the regional bloc that once stood as West Africa's democratic firewall it is collapsing under repeated coups. The symbolism is undeniable. West Africa's pro-democracy architecture is fracturing in real time. Now, Ecowas did mandate its chairperson to lead a high-level mediation mission to Guinea-Bissau and called for the National Electoral Commission to proceed with releasing the election results. But with the new military government firmly in place, the question remains, does ECOWAS still have any real power left to enforce its will? But ECOWAS wasn't the only regional actor to react. Some neighbors took positions that reveal deeper political alignment, and the cracks in West African unity are now impossible to ignore. Ghana issued a sharp condemnation, called for constitutional order, and made it clear that military takeovers will not be tolerated in West Africa. The statement from the capital was firm, direct, and unambiguous. A message that positioned Ghana as a defender of democratic values in a region that is rapidly losing them. And for many observers, Ghana is now stepping into the regional voice role once held by Nigeria. Nigeria, on the other hand, took longer to respond, and when it did, this was November 27, yesterday, the tone was noticeably measured. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria released a statement condemning the coup. Obviously, they describe it as a serious threat to democracy and regional stability. Nigeria called the takeover a blatant violation of Ecowas protocols and warned that perpetrators will be held accountable. A lot of people interpreted the delay, or should I say, the careful wording, as strategic hesitation. So why the difference? Nigeria is overstretched. Domestically, the country is grappling with economic challenges, rising insecurity, and political instability. On the regional stage, its leadership within ECOWAS has weakened severely. The fact that Nigeria couldn't even coordinate the extraction of one of its former presidents from Guinea-Bissau, that speaks volume about its declining influence. Ghana, meanwhile, appears ready to fill that vacuum. This divergence in tone reveals something deeper. ECOWAS is not a unified force anymore. It's a collection of nations with competing interests, limited resources, and fading authority. And while government debated the legitimacy of the coup, a far more dramatic development was unfolding behind the scenes, one that will expose just how fractured the West African region has become. Now, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, trapped in Guinea-Bissau during the coup, was not rescued by Nigeria. He was rescued by Ivory Coast. Let us sink in for a moment. One of Nigeria's most respected former presidents was in the country as part of a joint election observer mission representing the African Union, ECOWAS, and the West African Elders Forum. When the military seized power on November 26, 2025, airports were shut, borders were sealed, and gunfire was heard across the capital. Jonathan and his delegation were stuck. The Nigerian House of Representatives held an emergency session and urged the federal government to activate all diplomatic channels to bring him home safely. But Nigeria was slow to act. It was Ivory Coast that stepped in decisively, coordinating the evacuation and providing the aircraft that flew Jonathan out of Guinea-Bissau. According to sources, the Ivorian government reached out to Jonathan first and had already concluded arrangements before the Nigerian government officials made meaningful contact. Nigeria, the supposed giant of Africa, couldn't protect or extract one of its own former presidents. What does this say about ECOWAS' internal fractures? Everything, honestly, because Ivory Coast, not Nigeria, acted decisively. Senegal, not Nigeria, negotiated the release and safe passage of President Embaló. Nigeria is no longer the dominant force it once was in this region. Its influence has eroded, its resources are stretched thin, and its ability to lead is now openly questioned. For Goodluck Jonathan, the former Nigerian president, the ordeal ended safely when he arrived in Abuja on the evening of November 27th. But for Nigeria, the damage to its reputation is lasting. And while diplomats were scrambling to get out, the man at the center of this crisis made a shocking move that confirmed every suspicion about what this coup was really about. So, hours after the military claimed he was detained, Embaló was spotted landing safely in Senegal. The Senegalese government announced late on November 27th that the ousted president had arrived. Their words, safe and sound, aboard a specially chartered aircraft. Senegal had negotiated his release with figures in Guinea-Bissau and arranged a flight to Dakar. Just like that, the man who claimed to have been arrested in a coup was free, far from Bissau and out of immediate danger. But the mystery here runs deeper. Was he arrested? Was he protected? Was he allowed to leave? The military claimed he was under their control. Embaló himself told French media outlet Jeune Afrique that he has been deposed and arrested on November 26th. Yet, within hours, he was on a plane to Senegal, negotiated out by neighboring government. This doesn't fit the pattern of a genuine military coup where a president is forcibly removed and detained indefinitely. His sudden exit confirms fears from local citizens and diaspora voices who insist the coup was staged to block the release of election results. Preliminary tallies circulated before the coup showed opposition candidate Fernando Diaz winning with over 50% of the vote. President Embaló, facing defeat, may have orchestrated the entire crisis to avoid announcing those results. His escape has now undermined the military's narrative completely. Diaspora reactions are already exploding online because confusion, anger, and deep mistrust is what is sweeping Guinea-Bissau right now. Many called it a fake coup, a power maintenance operation, not a genuine overthrow. And as Embaló fled to Senegal, the general moved fast to consolidate power back in Guinea-Bissau. Within 24 hours of the military takeover, a military general was sworn in as the new head of state. General Hota Naman, the former chief of general staff and a close ally of President Embaló, took the oath of office at Army headquarters on November 27, 2025 in a ceremony broadcast live on state television. He announced that the military government would oversee a one-year transition period. The speed of the transition suggests pre-planning, not chaos. So, who is this general? He is a career soldier in his mid-60s, a member of the Balanta ethnic group and a Soviet-trained military officer. He served as head of the Presidential Guard before being appointed Chief of General Staff back in 2023. He was considered one of Embaló's most trusted allies, and his appointment as the coup leader shocked observers precisely because of that loyalty. How does a president's closest military ally lead the coup against him? Unless, and this is the part people are talking about, unless it was never really against him at all. Public suspicion is already growing high. Ordinary citizens and diaspora commentators are saying the same thing. This wasn't a coup. This was a power maintenance operation. Opposition politicians were detained. The military moved to protect itself, and cocaine trafficking networks were mentioned repeatedly in justifications by the military juntas. Researchers and analysts pointed out that this scenario benefits Embaló, who can now be released, repositioned, and potentially run again in future elections. But the strongest condemnation didn't come from Ecowas or neighboring governments. It came from the entire world. The United Nations publicly condemned the coup, calling it a direct attack on democracy. Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a statement expressing, and these were his words, deep concern about the unfolding events in Guinea-Bissau. He strongly condemned the coup and any attempt to violate the constitutional order. Guterres stressed that disregarding the will of the people who peacefully cast their votes during the November 23, 2025 elections constitutes an unacceptable violation of democratic principles. The UN chief subsequently called for the immediate and unconditional restoration of constitutional order and the release of all detained officials, including electoral authorities, opposition leaders, and other political actors. He urged all stakeholders to exercise restraint, uphold the rule of law, and resolve disputes through peaceful and inclusive dialogue. Now, these are the usual reaction you could expect from the United Nations. Every single coup in Africa, this is like a template, copy and paste. They just read it out and they move on. Now, the African Union also weighed in. The AU Commission chairperson, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, condemned the military takeover and reiterated the AU's zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes of government. He called for the immediate and unconditional release of all detained officials and stressed that only the National Electoral Commission has the legal authority to proclaim election results. Joint statement from AU and Ecowas election observers demanded the release of arrested electoral officials and condemned the blatant attempt to disrupt the democratic process. International implications are already unfolding because potential sanctions, aid freezes, diplomatic isolation, they are all on the table. Portugal, Guinea-Bissau's former colonial power, they urge restraint and restoration of institutional functioning. South Africa and France also condemned the coup, But the loudest voices aren't coming from foreign capitals or international organizations. They are coming from inside Guinea-Bissau itself. Ordinary people left stranded in fear, and they are the ones paying the highest price. Now, with borders closed, institutions suspended, and both candidates silenced, Guinea-Bissau faces its most dangerous crossroad in a decade. The human impact is profound because fear, confusion, economic shutdown, they are the current realities people are facing in the country right now. Businesses and banks closed, residents stayed indoors, and soldiers patrolled the streets. Small protests were dispersed with tear gas and warning shots, but no major casualties were reported. The capital remains tense, uncertain, and waiting for answers that may never come. What comes next? A long military transition, international intervention, or fresh elections, or even deepening authoritarian rule? The one-year transition period announced by the military offers no guarantees. History shows Guinea-Bissau has experienced 9 coups or attempted coups since independence from Portugal in 1974. Stability has never lasted long. A lot of analysts are raising alarm bells about a potential long military rule in Guinea-Bissau. Ecowas is weakening. Military governments are on the rise. Foreign influence from Europe, from drug cartels, from regional separative movements like those in Casamance, all of it is entangled in this crisis. The West African political order is currently collapsing. Guinea-Bissau, a country of just 2 million people with an average annual income of less than $1,000, is now a symbol of everything breaking down across West Africa. This is not just Guinea-Bissau's story. This is a warning for the future of West Africa. The aftershock is still spreading, and the region has yet to find solid ground. Now, if you are watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, and this is where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view. If you have been following our coverage of this coup since it unfolded on November 26th, you will agree with me that this coup is an inside job by the government of President Embaló. Now, think about this. The guy who took over from him is his closest ally. It's almost like a negotiated transition of power to someone he trusts, instead of allowing the Electoral Commission to announce the opposition, Fernando Diaz, as the winner of the presidential election. If you are a Nigerian, you should be familiar with what happened on June 12, 1993, when the military annulled an election that MKO Abiola was obviously winning. And it is a painful experience because the people of Guinea-Bissau actually hoped that Fernando Diaz will win this election and possibly fix the country, fight poverty, fix the economy, and tackle the drug trafficking rings operating in the country. These are the real and immediate challenges facing the people in Guinea-Bissau. But now, it appears that all the mobilization, all the campaign, and every emotional investment that the people of Guinea-Bissau invested in this election has been thwarted by President Embaló and his allies. And I must say this, I think I said it in my previous video, this is not a regular coup. A regular coup will not have a president escape the country within days of the coup. A regular coup will not be hunting the opposition candidates. A regular coup will focus on detaining the existing corrupt order. But in this case, it appears that the president has been let off the hook. He is now in Senegal, hiding away from the chaos that is happening as a result of this coup. So this is the latest update happening in Guinea-Bissau right now. If you are in Guinea-Bissau, maybe go to the comment section and tell us minute by minute update on what is happening. We are interested in what is happening in your country because we are all Africans and we are all West Africans. Whatever happened in one West African country affects every West African country. That is why anytime I talk about West Africa, I'm as emotional and personal with it as I am when I'm talking about Nigeria, my country. Now, if you want to continue to see my content, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am still your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.